Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. You'll notice this one is the same one that we had last week on. It's a Troy-Bilt Bronco 42-inch mower. Customer brought it in with some issues. We went through and figured out exactly why it wasn't starting. Got it back starting and running, but went to pull it out and realized, guess what? There's no brakes at all. Pulled it back up, and I'm going to show you how to diagnose a issue if your brakes are not working at all, or if your mower is in neutral, but the brakes are still engaged. Pretty easy to diagnose and fix, pretty quick. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button as we go along if you enjoy the content. The first thing I tried to do since there were no brakes is make a brake adjustment. It's a pretty quick and simple adjustment on this. And once I did that, what happened is that the brakes are locked up. I could not get those brakes to release once I got them to engage. So that's telling us there's a bigger issue with this than what we thought as far as an adjustment goes. With the generally poor condition that this deck and everything was in, and the whole mower was in, wouldn't doubt if it's all just seized up and needs a little bit of attention. Pretty well every model out there, you're gonna be looking behind the right wheel for this adjustment. Most of these, you're not gonna actually have to take the wheel off if you just need to adjust it. Say it's not engaging, you can get to this adjustment right behind the wheel without removing it, but I'm gonna remove it just to show you a little bit closer here how it looks. And my issue, we'd probably have to remove it anyway. It's just a 1/2 inch bolt that's holding this on. Some of you are gonna have different designs if you've got a different mower. Some of them have clips and stuff that hold them on. And just jack up the rear end here. Of course, that doesn't want to come off easily. Imagine that. Grab a rubber mallet. Many times it doesn't take a whole lot, but other times you'll run into some issues. If you do, I'll put a video link down below. See our other video on removing stuck tires and rims. So we've got everything off, and here is our brake assembly. We'll get a little closer shot. The brake right here has this rod that comes to the front that attaches to this spring, and it pulls on this lever. It basically acts as a cam, and there's a couple little pins in here that push on brake pads. This spring just returns it back to the right where it is, but it's not moving much. It's not really doing a whole lot now, and I did adjust it. There's a couple different ways to adjust this. You can adjust it in the unlocked position where the parking brake's not locked in. And you basically tighten it down until you feel a little bit of resistance, and then you loosen it back up until it rolls freely. Otherwise, I like to actually lock the parking brake down, and I'll roll it back and forth until I start to feel some resistance. As soon as I start to feel it locking, I'll go about another 1/2 of a turn, and then I'll stop. And then once you release the parking brake, you double check and make sure everything's working correctly. Usually it'll free roll fine, and you'll get plenty of brake action out of it at that point. Sometimes that won't work well if your brake pads are worn down or some other things. I'll show you a little bit more about that here soon. Take this nut off. I'm gonna take all this apart now since I've already tried this adjustment, and basically all this adjustment did is make me have no brakes, from going from no brakes to the brakes not releasing. That's not what we want. We obviously want our brakes to release. We're gonna take these two 3/8 bolts out, one on either side. Remember how all this goes. There's a bolt and a plate here that comes out. Got a washer on the middle. Then this spring, actually, you can pull it all together with this whole assembly. Yeah, it's gonna fly apart. So again, take pictures or pay attention to how this goes. This goes back just in here like such. The little tab goes down in the bottom. and then it locks just around like that. Pull that all off. And once you get this off, it's all gonna kind of fall apart. So I'm kind of holding it towards the back so we don't lose anything here. That's your brake pad. So I flipped it upside down. You can see that it's kind of worn down some. It's our brake pad there. And we've got a metal plate in here. And look at that, all rusted. A bunch of debris and everything else in there. And these are two little pins. That's what this cam works against. This cam actually pushes on these two little pins, but guess what? Those two little pins are completely seized up. So as soon as I tighten that down and push those in some, all that was doing is pushing on our brake pad, and it locked our brake in like it should have, but it wouldn't release. That pressure coming back from this cam coming back this way, that did not allow it to release backwards. So that's what our problem's gonna be here, is that that's not gonna work until we get it freed up. Now this brake pad will come straight off, if it's not all locked up, that is. See if I can't get something on the backside to pry with. The only reason we're taking this off here is we basically want to get back there and look at that. We want to look at the brake pad on the backside and make sure it's in good shape also. Looks like it's coming. The flange, as you can see, goes this way towards us, just like we took it off, and the flat part goes backwards. You can clean all that up as much as you want, get everything good there. This brake pad looks pretty similar to the other one, pretty well the same. It's not all broken into pieces or anything, so we're not going to worry about it. We'll take this piece of the brake here, we'll take it over to the vise here, and we'll go ahead and get these punched out and cleaned up, and we'll get all this back together so it works properly. So I'm just going to put this like such, hold it down there. Kind of a big mess over here with everything we're moving around right now, but I'm just going to punch this one at a time out of there. One down. So these are, as you can see, extremely rusted up in real bad shape. Once we get those cleaned up and get the inside here cleaned up, we'll get all this back together and that thing will work just great like it should. And I'll show you how to adjust it like I would in real time. Safety first, fellas, get those glasses on and go ahead and get this all cleaned up. You can use whatever you want, really. If you got a grinder on a, if you got a wire wheel on a bench grinder, that's fine. Use that, watch your fingers. You can do it all by hand, however you want to do it. This needs to be all cleaned up. Brass takes a little bit longer like I'm doing here, but it works well also. If you don't want anyone to know who you are anymore, you can use something like this, a wire wheel. Again, this is dual use. Remove your fingerprints and the rust at the same time. Looking pretty good. I don't feel any of that rust. As long as you don't feel anything on it, it's fine. And then I've got kind of some random pipe brushes that work well for stuff like this, just to get everything out of there. You want it as clean as can be, of course. All right, nice and free. We can get all the stuff just out of the other side here where it kind of gets caught in. Use another wire brush or whatever you'd like. Again, clean everything around this side off also. Cleaner you get it, the better, again. And it does not matter which way this goes back on. It's exactly the same both ways. I believe this way was down to begin with and this was up. Go ahead and clean our flat bar up. A piece of sandpaper on a flat surface seems to work just about as well as anything for flat stock. And clean that rust right off. This out of the way, use a little carb cleaner. Got my Sure Shot fired back up. A lot of times I use it this time of the year, once we have some time to think for a second. I use it to remove the fluid off of all the brake cleaners over the years that over the year that we've dropped and ruined. Usually a handful of them. Didn't quite get all of them into that one Sure Shot container, but it's just something years and years ago I started doing just to save a little bit of cash. Optimize as much as you can for your money. Again, you can take all this off the side. You can, you can get it varying stages of cleanness. But ultimately that stuff on the outside is not going to matter. It's all about the stuff on the inside that is going to matter. Make sure that these freely go in. They're just free as can be. Both sides. That's how they should go through. If there's any resistance there at all, or you've still got stuff in them, you want to address that before putting everything back together. We will use some anti-seize all in here. You can use grease or anti-seize or really whatever you want to use. You just want to make sure that that's well lubed as it goes. You can also throw some in the backside. And this stuff goes on thin, but it gets really thick after a second. It just kind of coats everything real well. While I'm here, I'm gonna go ahead and clean up our brake pad. Just kind of getting some of the surface rust off of there. And yes, I was throwing everything that way, so it wasn't getting right there. We'll put our first brake pad in there. It goes without saying, or it should anyway, that you don't want to lubricate that. It should be completely free, dry, and not greased. And then we'll put our brake disc against it while we hold it into place. Again, the flange comes this way, out towards us. You can also get it in there by starting with it kind of halfway on like this and coming up through the bottom and then pushing it back. Either way, it's got to be fully seated and in the right position there before everything goes back on. It should sit right about there, and it's essentially sitting almost against that pad. Now, if yours are worn a little bit like this, you want to make sure that that back part sits at the bottom, that little groove, because that's where it's actually going to ride, just like such. Now if these are too thin, you will want to replace those. I see people replace them with, gosh, I've seen wood, I've seen a lot of things, because some of these get kind of expensive, but use the right brake pad. You want to be able to stop. Now basically what we want to do is we want to take this, we want to put it back in here where it was, and then we want to get our brake pad there, just like that. So if you haven't realized how this actually works, what this does is you've got that brake pad on the back side that's sitting there just like this, and you've got this cam at the front. So this cam comes from here, and it'll actually push on these two pieces, which in turn, so as it gets pulled this way with the design of it, it's going to get pulled so these get pushed in, and that's pushing your brake pad further towards your brake disc. And there's one on the back side, so it just pinches this brake disc in between those two pads, and that's what stops your mower. And then it can go back together. Again, it does not matter which way this goes. I'm going to hold that together there. That way everything doesn't fall out, because if it comes down, it's going to fall out. So the easiest way for me is I like to just start this one, and then I like to actually just tighten this side down. And I'll take this one out. That way everything's together. Everything's there where it should be. And then we can proceed to put everything else back together without having to worry about that falling apart. Now if this came out, all you've got to do, put it back in just like such. And that goes up top. And then we've got our spring. So you can put it just kind of like that, and you'll tip it down into there, or do it as you're going. Either way. Push it down. Now when that pushes back, it springs back like such. And then you've got your washer that goes there. You usually see the side that's towards the cam. And then we can tighten our lock nut. Just going to put it kind of at a starting point there that may be a tiny bit too tight. Either way. But I'm going to put this tire back on, and then I'll show you how to adjust it. I'm going to show you both ways to do this. Right now it's in neutral, and it does actually freewheel, which is great. That's what we want. So if you've got it in neutral, you want to find that center adjusting nut, that 1/2 inch, and you want to continue to roll it back and forth until you feel some resistance. I feel some resistance now, so I'm going to loosen it just a little bit. Now it's rolling freely again with no resistance. Now when I push the brake, it is locked up. The other way you can do it, I've got the brake locked in right now, but I'm going to go ahead and loosen this nut. And I'm going to show you many times how I do it. It'll be loose. So right now we can freewheel it. This is what happens a lot of times when you guys, your brakes won't work. It'll freewheel even though the brake's locked in. What you do, you start to roll until you feel that resistance. That's good that there's resistance, but you don't want it to move at all. So once you get it to not move at all, I go about another 1/2 turn. Now I've got the brake unlocked, and it still freewheels. Now let's see how much difference that is than the other way. Let's go about 1/4, about 1/2, and there it is. So it's about 1/2 turn difference than doing it the other way. Well guys, hopefully this has helped you with your MTD, Troy-Bilt, or any other model of a riding mower that's a geared unit to adjust the brakes on it. They're pretty much the same design no matter what model you have, even on the hydro units. But get this done exactly like this, the adjustment done exactly like this, regardless of the make or model, and that'll get you back up and going to where your brakes are working like they should, and everything freewheels like it should also. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed the content.